Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. In each episode, we invite guests to have honest conversations about their mental health journeys with the goal of destigmatizing mental health within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Due to the nature of the podcast, we'll be discussing a variety of mental health topics and possibly triggering experiences. While we and the majority of our guests are not trained professionals, we encourage you to practice self-care while listening and seek professional guidance if you or a loved one is in need of support. With that said, let's start the episode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Hanabusa, and I describe my mental health journey as work in progress.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Changing Tides podcast. My name is Matthew Yonemura. I am your host as always, and welcome back to another episode. I'm very excited to jump into this one with another amazing guest. We have had just amazing guests every episode, and it's been an honor to share the stories that we have, and honestly, it's been an honor that people have trusted Changing Tides and myself to share their stories. It takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of trust. So I appreciate everyone that has come on. In the same vein, I have to be as honest as our guests and just be honest about my mental health. This last week was kind of tough. Not all tough. There were just a couple days in there that were really difficult. A lot of anxiety that really wasn't caused by anything specifically, but I think that happens to us. And we kind of think about, every worst case scenario in every realm of life. But I'm happy to be recording this right now, feeling much better. It feeds right into Changing Tides, but I'm just really happy that I was able to ride the wave of mental health and take the ups and downs and be here today to put out this next episode, because this guest is amazing, and I won't stall any longer, and we'll jump into this interview. I'd also like to add that we had some technical difficulties with this episode, but Michelle was super helpful. There was some glitchiness in the Zoom recording, but she was kind enough to record her audio on her phone, email me the audio file. So if you're watching this on YouTube, any glitchiness, I apologize. It might have been the internet on my side, but Michelle was kind enough to help us make sure we got the best episode out there so that it was clear. But yeah, if there's any pauses or lots of skips in the video that you see, I apologize, but I think we made do. I'd like to think that the edits were pretty good and not too jumpy. This guest is the founder and creative director for the clothing brand Uprisers, which we will be tagging in the description if you want to check them out. She is also the co-founder of the nonprofit Hate is a Virus, which really just aims to uplift communities that may be in need at any point in time. It was an honor to have this guest. She is an amazing, powerful woman, and it's an honor that she trusted us to share her story. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the interview that we had with Michelle Hanabusa. Michelle, thank you for being on the podcast. We're so excited to have you through a mutual friend, a mutual connection in Mike. This has been a long time in the works. I know you've been busy. We'll get into that. But I'd like to kind of start with asking you about your mental health journey and how you said it's a work in progress. If you could dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. Yes, Mike Marase is awesome. He's been a really great mentor of mine and collaborator over the years. And I'm glad that we've been able to finally do this. So my mental health journey is definitely a work in progress. I think that there's a lot of learnings that I've been just going through, especially over this past year and a half. It's a work in progress because I have pretty much for my entire life kind of put others or just like passion projects or whatever it may be first before myself. And, I think when I was younger, I was definitely able to kind of just ignore any of like, feeling fatigue or any of those things. But as I'm getting older, it's definitely harder to ignore. And so I'm at a stage now where I feel like there are times where I do need to kind of prioritize myself and my mental health moving forward.
For sure. You did mention a little bit about when you were younger and being able to kind of push this stuff aside. Um, could you talk a little bit about your upbringing and your experience growing up as a Japanese American?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am a fourth generation Japanese Okinawan American. So the Okinawa part is something new that I've been like introducing when I introduce myself. Um, it was a really, really great. I think when I look back at my upbringing, it's just been. I'm just so lucky to have been exposed to so many different things and avenues within just my parents, my grandparents, and my family. We're all based here for the most part in Los Angeles or Southern California, and my mom is first generation, and so growing up, it was just a lot of speaking Japanese at the home. Japanese was my first language. And as a fourth generation, you don't really hear that often, right? I think a lot of my peers have either just don't know how to speak or don't know how to understand the language. Um, and my mom definitely instilled that throughout my youth, growing up and making sure I'm like celebrating New Year's Day or Shogatsu and even like Children's Day. And my elementary school was a mixture of like a language immersion program. And so we would learn languages in both English and then Japanese. And I at home I would embrace those things, and even just eating, all of my mom's cuisines, my Japanese or my the Japanese cuisines that my mom would make. But I think living in, I guess, the American culture or whatnot, I started to kind of lose my Japanese identity in a sense, because I was trying to blend in with a lot of my peers. And so that was the majority of my preteens, teenager years, even going all the way up to college. And so, in between that time, I think I absolutely embraced my Japanese identity when it came to activities that I would engage in. But then my day to day was the complete opposite. So it almost felt like living two different lives in a way. I also did like, like the JA ball, and like did that for so many years, and attended Nisei Week every year since I could remember. So
Yeah, I think that's, well, definitely interesting that as a fourth generation that you grew up speaking the language. I'm fifth generation, and it's completely like, it's something I want to pick
wow.
up, but it's so far away from my experience. And my parents also, my dad spoke a little bit, but not so much my mom. But yeah, definitely interesting that you grew up speaking the language. Um, and I love to hear that like you were able to experience parts of your JA culture, but of course, Asian Americans, we face that duality of trying to embrace our culture but fit in, and at those young ages, it's so much more difficult. But before I go too much into that, because there's so much of your work now that I want to discuss. But first, as you were growing up, were there any experiences in your childhood that you think really led to you now and the work that you do now for the AAPI community?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, it's so interesting because it's like it's only recent that we've started to really share these like encounters that we've had, and there were a ton of just like microaggressions that I didn't even recognize right until recently. Anywhere from almost being proud that my dad sounded, Caucasian or whatnot. And I would hear from my peers and their mothers being like, "Oh, I just spoke to your dad on the phone. I thought that he was white," you know, um, because he had perfect English, all the way from just even in the world of figure skating, there were a lot of microaggressions of just, oh, because you look Asian, you are able to like skate to a Chinese music, or um, let's have all of your skating costumes be like this Chinese inspired outfit. So there was just a lot of different things that now when I look back and kind of like uh, not analyze, but kind of just reflect on, realizing like all the different microaggressions that we all experienced. And then, most recently, this is something that I've never shared before outside of my immediate family. And the first time I ever shared it, I actually end up, and this is like on public, like live recording too, I was bawling my eyes. It was the first time that I ever shared that story. And I think that was more than just a microaggression. It was a legit racism, in front of all of my peers and obviously myself as well. And this happened when I transferred schools from Culver City to the South Bay here in Palos Verdes. And at that time, I was just trying to make new friends because I had no friends being a transfer student. And I was at a friend's house with a few other peers, and a mother came in and blatantly asked why I deserved to sit at the dinner table, and referring to me as like a monkey and like that it should be outside. And so we think that was like the biggest experience that I have kept inside. But all of these different things that you kind of deal with or hear and whatnot adds up. And, it got to a point where not only did I find my own identity and the confidence to speak up and like use my voice for something bigger than myself, but just kind of reflecting on all of these experiences allowed me to have more of a strength to kind of like do the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a lot more than a microaggression or like a minor experience. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that because I mean, unfortunately, but I guess fortunately for today, like it's not as blatant, or at least I wouldn't think it's as blatant anymore, but like it obviously still happens, but I'd like to think that things are changing a little bit, but we'll kind of dive into that a little bit as we go on. But yeah, it those tough experiences, they're so brutal, but as you said, like it's kind of helped you to get to where you are now and be this voice within the community. um and with that said, um you mentioned the kind of the dual life, but at what point did you kind of start seeking a stronger connection to your Japanese roots in the culture? Was there like a turning point where you decided like this is really a part of me and I want to embrace this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always loved being Japanese American. I loved all the experiences that my mom and my family like shared with me over the years since I was little. But there was a point right after college that I really started to embrace it as a whole, right? So like there wasn't this like duality anymore. It was like, this is me and I'm gonna like be embracing it, practicing it, celebrating it every single day, 24/7 days of my life. And so that didn't happen until after college and when I really started to work in just like corporate life. Um, when you're in your early 20s and you start experiencing like real life and all these responsibilities, I think a lot of my midlife, or not my midlife, sorry, my quarter life crisis came a little bit sooner than 25. But I really started to feel like I had to kind of refocus and just like really focus on finding my identity and my voice. And so, um, right after college, that journey began. And actually joining Nisei Week also helped kind of like solidify like what I was really passionate about. And, meeting all of the different businesses and organizations and traveling around and whatnot, it really opened my eyes to kind of figure out, okay, how can I utilize the network and my skill set in like the creative field for something bigger than myself, something that's good for, that can help, how I can positively impact the community.
Amazing. Uh, all of this has kind of led to the real, the work that I want to show off that you do, because we have a loose foundation of your early chapters of your life, and now I'd kind of like to dive into, the amazing work you're doing through Uprisers before we even get into Hate is a Virus. So when did you find your love
Yeah, let's do
for,
it.
with all that in mind, when did you find your love for clothing and design?
Yeah, that, um, it really started at an early age. Even when I was a figure skater, I was always designing my costumes. I put in the time to put every single rhinestone on there myself. And like, I just really, really enjoyed almost that like arts and crafts feel to it. In high school, actually, it's so funny. This morning, I'm staying with my parents this week. This morning I woke up and my mom is wearing a shirt that I designed in high school. um, and I was just trying to learn the screen printing process. And as I really started to love the art of graphic design, figuring out design on clothing became my mission of just really perfecting my like Illustrator, Photoshop skills. And so, seeing that shirt that my mom was wearing this morning, I was like, oh, wow, I actually have been doing this for a while. I just didn't realize that like you could maybe make this into a business, right? And it just, I guess over the years, even throughout college, I started like a small business where I would design clothes and produce them for sororities and fraternities at my school, and then started expanding that through like different chapters in different states. And so I think it was just an ongoing progression, and I just loved this idea of bringing conversations to life through clothing, because ever since I could remember, the art of writing and speaking wasn't really my like strongest suit. It was through like visual representation, such as arts and graphic design.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can't believe that's such a fun anecdote to know that your mom is wearing an early Michelle Hanabusa product, which um, so you say you started it so early, but throughout the process of creating what is now Uprisers, did you have any self-doubts about the feasibility of creating a clothing line? And if you did, how did you power through that?
Oh yeah. Self-doubt. When they say you are your biggest enemy, I totally understand that. I think even till this day, I'm like, it's that imposter syndrome of like, am I good enough? Should I even be like, leading the space or be able to talk about it or whatnot? That always comes across my mind. But I think when you love something so much and you're so passionate about it, I think that overcomes any of these like doubts that you have about yourself. And, uh, you know, I think I've been doing this for quite some time now, that I've come to realize that, I do understand the space. I know like the ins and outs from start to finish and how all of this works. And I think just kind of constantly reminding myself that it's like, you put in the time and you put in the work, and you should just own it. And a really good practice, and something that I've been implementing for the past, I don't know, many, many years now, is just journaling. And that's kind of helped me kind of push through some of the hardest obstacles over the years.
Amazing. You know, I just finished film school myself, and what my professor would always tell me, like, journal, 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 which is a habit I need to get more into.
Yes.
I need to get more into journaling, but this might be the push to hear it from you that you like it translates for you as well. I might need to actually put pen to paper. Um, so I love to hear that because I think with the arts or any career passion, if you truly love it, then I'd like to think that the success will come because you put in the time and you put in the work. So I love to hear that from you.
Thank you.
And Michelle, I sent you all of these questions in advance, except for the fact that I learned afterward you're a title winning, award winning ice skater. I had no idea.
Oh my gosh, that was a different chapter of my life.
You know, but I'm sure there's some type of, I'm just curious, like, what was that experience of competing like for you? And does any of that, like, time and effort into ice skating translate into your approach for Uprisers?
Yeah, figure skating was, I think it was like 14 years of my life, and it was like a very strict schedule, right? And I think early on, no one forced me to do skating. It was all just from my like will and wanting to, just get on the ice and practice and wear all like the pretty dresses or whatnot. Um, the fact that you have like a specific goal in mind and it doesn't happen overnight and you have to just keep on pushing every single day and waking up at 4 in the morning 6 days out of the week when you are really really small and like having to miss those birthday parties, right, of your classmates. I think all of those experiences kind of translate to what I'm doing today because even though Uprisers is a small business, we're not like a huge like conglomerate or whatever. Um, it it takes a lot of just time and just personal grit to just keep on going, and I definitely utilize those same skills that I learned in skating for today. And I I think when I'm really passionate about something like how I was with skating, you know, kind of pushing through all of the, especially this past year, right? I think there was like this additive level of like continuing to push through your personal emotions and feelings of like how our community was feeling and a lot of things hitting home, being able to still operate and like still continue to, encourage our team to just keep on going is something that like I've learned in the sport from the sport.
You know, speaking of pushing through, one of my favorite things about Uprisers, besides the fact that it's amazing products, is the way that you use social media. One of which is my personal favorite is the story series. Talking about the roots. So if you can kind of share what inspired doing the story series and what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you liked the Roots series. I wasn't sure how people were like resonating with it, but it was really inspired by the fact that you know all of our stories should be told, and it's like how we tell it is kind of up to us. But with everything that's been going on um, with our community and just within this past couple years, it's become more and more apparent that like I'm so passionate about telling underrepresented stories, and that's how Uprisers began. But it's like, how can we do this in a way that we can also celebrate it, and it doesn't have to be so like dark and grim and whatnot? Because I could definitely go that route too. But when people were starting to share it just via emails, to our like customer service email and just sharing their stories that way organically, it kind of sparked this idea of like, how can we continue to celebrate where we came from, because it's so different and so unique, in a visual way, and how can I incorporate this within like collections, so that they become conversation starters and hopefully inspire one to talk to their elders or talk to their family members that they're in touch with, to get a better understanding of like what they've been through. Because it's not necessarily a conversation that you have at the dinner table every single day, right? And it takes a little bit of effort to kind of like dig deep and ask those questions, let alone like, some of our grandparents or whoever don't want to talk about, the things that they've been through. But I think us just putting in the extra time to sit down and talk to them, hopefully we're able to understand ourselves better as well. That was a long-winded answer. I'm so sorry.
No, I loved it, because I think that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. Because I love to hear the fact that
Okay, good.
I love to hear that it's not just about, because so much of the news about our community lately has been the negative side of things. And then as a result, we share those negative stories, and then we hear about more people coming forward with their experience with microaggressions or just outright racism. So that I love to hear the root stories, or to read the root stories rather, because it's the other side of things. It's the strength of our community and the strength of the individuals within our community. And that is why I love that so much. So yeah, I was so happy when that started, because I just think it's so inspiring. And speaking of
Yay, thank
inspiring,
you.
I
Amazing. Yeah, and it's just like there's so many different levels to it. And just even talking about like Japanese Americans, for the longest time people just assumed that my family was interned, and being in school, there would be like, we would learn about it for a split second and people would turn to me being like, oh, so like what's your story with internment camps? And for I just found out that my great great aunt was interned, but before that, because I didn't know her or her part of the history, my family story doesn't happen like with that, because they were all stuck in Japan. So I think that there's so much that needs to be told, and that we aren't this like monolith, right, of just like Asian Americans that have this like one story.
definitely 100%, because like personally, my side of like my family on both sides of my parents, all in California, both sides of the family were both put into internment camps. So as you said, it's not this one size
Mm.
fits all. um, so but with that, along with everything that you're doing with Uprisers, we touched on it a little bit, but you also are one of the co-founders of Hate is a Virus. Can you share what that initiative is and how it came to be?
Yeah, definitely. So Hate is a Fire started early or end of February, early March, and it started off as just a local initiative, or just thought to figure out how we can support local Asian owned small restaurants who were starting to feel the effects of um, xenophobia and mixed messaging and whatnot. Uh, and we wanted to have a weekly food crawl where we would gather our community to just go around and support small businesses and whatnot. Um, we were able to hold one, and then a couple of days later, lockdown happened. So that initial idea to go out in real life and eat at restaurants that we wanted to support, um, went away very, very quickly, but it also encouraged us to just keep on going. And so that's where I was able to connect with my co-founder, Tammy Cho, to take it more into a digital space. And we wanted to just open up a social platform where people can feel like it's a safe space to not only share their story, but to know that we're kind of, that people are not alone in this. And within a matter of weeks, we got over 15 million impressions, and not just in the United States, but across the world. And we were getting messages out from Australia and the UK and Canada of folks who were experiencing the same things, and that they were really happy that they found a platform where they didn't feel so alone.
That's amazing. And it really goes into the work that you do with Uprisers, because it's not just a clothing brand. You have such strong messaging with it. It all has a purpose. They're both based in like community and this uplifting of others. So what inspired you to be such an advocate for others through your career?
Oh yeah. Whew. I'm just someone said the other day, they're like, "Oh, Michelle, I feel like at the end of the day, you're like a community builder." And I was like, huh, interesting. Like, I never really thought of myself that way, but I think that's what oftentimes gets me going and all like rallied up in a good way, right? Of like wanting to just keep going and doing this work. There is, Tammy and I from Hate is a Virus, we talk about this a lot. And I think, with Hate is a Virus, it grew very, very quickly. And we realized that there needed to be more than just like raising awareness. And we had to figure out how the audience who were following us to have a better understanding of like why these things were happening, what are different action steps that they could be taking, because everyone who was coming on board and messaging us, we realized that everyone was on a different journey, right? And just didn't really know where to begin. And so there became this tie to kind of like the core of what Uprisers was doing pre-pandemic, was to bring community together. And at the end of the day, walk out with like learning something or figuring out how they can give back to community. And just to backtrack a little bit, Uprisers, we would have just these like low-key community events in my backyard at the time. And we would invite different organizations and representatives within those organizations to come out and speak about their work. And we would throw like fundraisers for them. And it would be mixed with, chefs and musicians and artists and whatnot to like entertain throughout the day. But then everyone who was involved would walk away with learning about this organization and learning about how they can get more involved within their local or even like national communities and organizations. And so I think that part of that DNA really trickles into kind of like the day-to-day that not only Uprisers embodies, but then what Hate is a Virus embodies. And there is this book that I've been reading, and this saying that says like, why be a star when you can make a constellation? And I think that really speaks to me so deeply, because I've always been about how can we like collaborate and continue to collaborate with like really good people with like good intentions, and how can we do something bigger than just like if one person was trying to do it,
Definitely. And you spoke about the small community events that were in your backyard, but if we just stop being a little modest here, Michelle, and if let's just be real and let's just put it out there, Uprisers has made some huge leaps this year. So can I please give you a moment to kind of flex a little bit and let people know where people can find your brand?
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. This is like the part that I like least like talking about. But yeah, I think, when it comes to like partnering with different companies or organizations or whatnot, I really want to make sure that it just fits well and they really understand the DNA or kind of like what Uprisers stands for. And earlier this year, we were able to release a capsule collection with PacSun to kind of introduce to their audience online and also in person, like what our mission is with Uprisers. And we've been in conversation with them for quite some time, but it just obviously COVID delayed the release and whatnot. But I think, timing is everything. And with everything that's been going on and how Hate is a Virus came to be as well, it was really encouraging to know that PacSun as a company really stood for and like understands and wants to continue to like amplify the work that we're doing. And so that was a really meaningful thing and an ongoing partnership moving forward. And I do feel like not only I'm one of the only like Asian American female designers on PacSun, but them allowing us to have full creative freedom and messaging to what we believe in, I think is really, really important, and to share, outside of our just immediate bubble, right? And to have more and more people understand kind of like all the nuances and whatnot that we go through and we want to share.
Because I just got in contact with you when the PacSun release was about to start, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, yes.
To be in contact with Michelle and this brand and this team, like this is crazy. And then you also were just recently stocked in the Complex store, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Complex was awesome. That also came about like very, very organically. And, just being part of the Complex family, that company has so many different arms to it. And so we were able to be a part of Complex Shop, which is their like online shopping space. And then we just released Complex Land, which was their like virtual experience that started because of COVID and everyone was locked in. So it was a really cool way to create your avatar online and kind of just experience the Complex world, right? And shop all the different streetwear brands. So we just released something there with our Roots collection. And then moving forward, which is something that I'm very, very excited about, is Complex Con is coming back this year, and hopefully will happen. But I think it's a really, really awesome opportunity to just like share who we are as a community and what we stand for, and to be very supported by like the Complex family in that sense is really, really exciting.
Amazing. Because I started with like shoes with Complex. Like that was my resource for the next release.
Yeah.
And then now with everything with Uprisers and just being more into fashion and everything, like it's just cool to see these two worlds collide and for them to support a woman, Asian American led company. It's just amazing. So we're kind of getting towards the end of this, but if you can you share a little bit about what's next for Uprisers?
Yeah. Something I can share is the Complex Con, which is going to happen at the beginning of November. And it's a whole weekend long thing, and more to come. So definitely we'll be like updating that on our social media platforms. We have a lot of exciting collaborations that are coming out. I can't really just share the details just yet, but definitely stay tuned for that. And what else can I share? Yeah, I think Complex is like the main big one that we're really pushing for the end of the year.
For sure. I'm so excited to see.
One that I'm like very excited about. I can't really share like all the details of, but we've been doing a lot of just R&D around how streetwear brands can be more sustainable moving forward. And so we have been actively working on this for like months now, but we'll be releasing something around more of like sustainability and like upcycling practices around how like clothing brands, streetwear brands can kind of like start inching our way, towards that.
I'm so excited to see everything that happens. My girlfriend and I just pre-ordered the Hate is a Virus with the proceeds going towards Hate is a Virus. I'm excited for the next collaboration.
Yeah.
So excited to see it all. But because of all this stuff coming up,
thank you so much for supporting.
Of course, I had to support. But with everything coming up, everything you've already done, how, with both Uprisers and Hate is a Virus, how do you maintain a work-life balance?
That is a really, really great question. I hope that maybe there's opportunities or ways that we can collaborate with you and your organization around this, because it's definitely a lot and something that is on top of mind of how things can be more balanced. And we're exploring different ways. But I think, both organizations taking a week break last week for the first time was really, really helpful. And we hope to kind of do this more so on like a quarterly basis moving forward, just so our team has like time to kind of regroup and take breaks, when they need to. But, like I said, this is a work in progress, and I would love to learn more from like you and your organization to see if there's ways that we can, do better.
Believe me, Changing Tides would be honored to work with you and your team in any way. So I think we'll talk after the recording, maybe, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
I would love that.
Amazing.
Okay, sounds good.
Wrapping up, a couple more, and then I have some quick fire ones for you, just for fun. But do you have any words of advice for other Asian Americans pursuing the creative fields?
I just say just keep doing you and just keep don't like hold on, let me backtrack for a second. I think what's the hardest point to get past is this like self-doubt or just not being perfect enough to be able to share your work, like publicly. And once you're able to get past that hump and just kind of share it with the world, even though it's not perfect, I think, and just being consistent at it, that is when you can start to see like results and start like winning and whatnot. I don't think that this idea of being perfect should ever be in our, rule book or whatnot. I think there's so much beauty in like imperfections, and you're just going to learn so much from just putting your work out there and for it to be seen, that once you're able to kind of gain that confidence to do it, I think the world is your oyster.
I think that's amazing advice. And then for the quick fire, one last thing. Is there anything you would like to say before we jump into the quick fire question round?
I appreciate you for taking the time to talk with me.
Michelle, I appreciate you and everything that you do with your many all the work you do and the many different initiatives within Uprisers and Hate is a Virus, which I will definitely be linking in the episode. We'll be linking all of it. So just so honored to have you on the podcast.
Amazing.
But quick fire round, just some quick ones for fun. Number one, if you could invite 5 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be?
Oh my goodness. I would actually bring my grandfather to the table. I would bring my grandma, who is still with me, and I'm very, very close with her. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna name all my family members, so I'm gonna not do that for this one. I will bring Michelle Kwan, because she was my first idol, someone that I looked up to. Who else? Was that 3 people? 2 more? I'm gonna bring Mike Morase. I would bring Mike Morase to the table. And then I always love talking to him. Who would be my 5th person? I guess my boyfriend.
Very cool. I love the tight family nature of it, and bring Michelle into the mix, bring Mike into the mix. I love it. What is a hidden talent of yours?
I think for the longest time, figure skating was my hidden talent, but I think more and more folks are realizing that. So I don't know if that's hidden anymore. I kind of have like what's that term when you have almost like a picture like memory where I can like see something and just like memorize it. Yeah. I kind of have like a photographic memory.
Cool. Very cool.
In a weird way. Yeah.
What is your favorite movie?
I just watched Your Name recently. Have you seen that?
That is a good one.
Yeah. I really love that movie.
Very cool. On the flip side of a hidden talent, what is a skill you don't have but wish you did have?
I have a really bad habit of not finishing my sentences. And so I think my team has to learn kind of like what I'm thinking without actually saying it. So I wish I could be like a little bit more articulate.
That's the talent of a good team, though. That's how you know you have a good team behind you. So if there's one person you could do a collaboration with, who would it be? Like a dream collab?
Before we even started Uprisers, I was like, if I could collaborate with Dr. Wu, he's like a Korean American tattoo artist. That would be a dream.
Very cool. If you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be?
Japan.
I'm right there with you. That's same for me. And then rounding it out with the final one, what would the title of your autobiography be?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. It's hard like talking about myself. So do you have any suggestions?
Uprisers. Or Upriser.
How we all rose up together.
I think that could be it. I think that's a good one. I think that's it.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
All right. Well,
I'm
Michelle,
not very good with titles, so.
No worries. But Michelle Hanabusa, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I'll definitely be reaching out to you and your team about potentially working with us, or us working with you, more like it. And other than that, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good one.
I would love to. Please email me. And I would love to brainstorm with you and the team.
Great. Thank you again to Michelle for joining us and sharing about Uprisers and Hate is a Virus and just all the work that she has done and how she's gotten here. It was really an honor to speak with her, as I've said many times throughout this episode. But if you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to our show for our episodes releasing on every other Tuesday, and give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you would like to support our podcast and help us grow, you can do so with a donation to the link at the bottom of the episode description. To hear more about Changing Tides, follow us on Instagram at LTSC_Changing Tides, or check out our website, thechangingtides.org. Let's continue to change the tides on mental health.